Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 344. I'm your host, Paul Reichoff. I am coming to you from the nation's capital with a very special live episode that we just finished taping here in Washington with our friends at the Independent Center. You're going to hear from two independent candidates, one for Senate, one for governor, and another one that might run from Tennessee. But it's an exclusive look inside our independent movement. I was honored to moderate it. We had folks like Senator Manchin, lots of former congressmen. We had our friend Todd Achilles, who was just on Independent Americans, and folks from across the independent movement unifying for a couple of hours here in Washington. We are bringing our independent movement nationwide and to the nation's capital. I'm going to take you inside this event that just finished here at the Independent Center in Washington. Check it out. Please continue to spread the word. Go to independentamericans.us for more, and know that this summer, our independent movement is continuing to grow, and we are making some noise, especially here in Washington. And pretty soon, more and more of us will be serving inside that Capitol. Stay vigilant, folks. Thank you for having us. Thank you to the folks from the Independent Center. My name is Paul Reichoff. I'm the host of the Independent Americans podcast. We started about 5 years ago talking about the independent movement, and I've had conversations with folks from all sides. And recently, last year, started to Meet the Independent Candidate series, where we've talked to independent candidates all the way up from Dan Osborne down to the local level in rural Texas to try to elevate the voices of leaders from across our movement. I also started a group last year called Independent Veterans of America, that is designed to recruit, support, and elect independent veterans to public office. We ran 11 candidates last year. We've got over 300 who are interested in running this year and next. So we really feel like veterans especially are at the tip of the spear for our independent movement. Maybe most powerfully because it's easy to understand what they stand for. We're going to hear, I think, some different voices from the independent movement. But at this moment where we all come together, I think what it means to be independent is important for us to consider and try to communicate, and I'm looking forward to hearing an answer from each of these folks on that. These are guys who are jumping in, or maybe jumping in, around here, but they're raising their hand, stepping up to serve, answer the call, and do what I think is a very noble and important thing, not just for our movement, but for our country. The country is starved for leadership that has integrity and independence, and these guys are standing up, and many of you in the room have also stood up. So I'm going to pass it around to them, and if you can't hear us in the back, just raise your hand. We did bring mics, because I'm an Army guy, so we always bring a backup. So we will hopefully have at least a recording of this for afterward. But we've got Todd Achilles, Ethan, and Khalil, and I'm going to start with Ethan here, who's running for governor of California, no small mission, and ask you if you could tell folks, who are you, why are you running, and why are you running as an independent? What does that mean to you, sir?
Well, I'm going to start from the end. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Why am I running as an independent? And what is that big white kind of empty middle there that's so large? And for me, being an independent, and I think that Joe Manchin captured it incredibly well when he said it's about loving America. I think that that's one of the, because in the independent world, the other thing is we're all authentic. And I think that's why it's so appealing. I think that's why 51% of voters are looking for independent, because I think that we're able to be authentic, and we're also able to take the hard mission, and you as a military man understand that, the hard mission, but the worthy mission, because we love our country. And we don't want to make sacrifices. We don't want to make trade-offs. We actually want to do what's right for our society. And I think that's what we all have in common. And I think independence, someone mentioned Bernie Sanders. I probably disagree with Bernie Sanders on a lot of things, a lot of solutions that he might come up with. But I think he loves America. And I think that we can have a great discussion about some things And I would like to believe that we can influence each other because we both share that love of America. So I think that's the appeal for me as an independent. My background is I'm a businessman. I had a kind of a career in finance and real estate, and I bring that experience to the table, but I grew up in very humble beginnings, and that also informs me. And so to me, I bring the balance I think that an independent really stands for, which is a sense of empathy with every American, and an understanding that the only way to create a great society is with win-win solutions. And I think that this two-party system and the media that kind of has grown around the two-party system fosters division, and it fosters a win-lose society, which a win-lose society is a lose-lose society. And that's what we have right now.
Last year, one of the candidates we endorsed at IBA was Dan Osborne, who was a Navy vet who ran as an independent in the state of Nebraska for Senate. And we said that Dan Osborne was the tip of the spear. An independent veteran named Brian Bangs that declared for Senate in South Dakota. And Todd was good enough to be the guest on my show last week. We had 2 weeks ago. We had Dan Osborne last week, but we had an excellent conversation where Todd framed it up for us. I also want to mention we're going to be recording this and broadcasting it tomorrow on video, audio, for our weekly episode of Independent Americans. So I encourage you to share that with folks far and wide. But as we said with Dan Osborne, we're recruiting. And now you've stepped up, Todd. And I think, interestingly, you left the Democratic Party, which I think is maybe the next phase of our movement, is folks leaving the Democratic and Republican Party. We say leave the herds and join the pack. You've done that. Can you share with folks why you did it and why you're running?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And appreciate Laura and Adam for inviting me here. And Senator Manchin and Heather, the data here is just great. You know, I'm Todd Achilles. I'm from Boise, Idaho. I grew up on a farm. I was a tank commander for a couple of years in the Army, and then spent 20 years in the tech industry before going back into public service. And I teach public policy now, and I lead a bipartisan veterans organization. And until 3 weeks ago, I was also a Democratic state representative in the Idaho House. And, you know, I left the party and I'm running despite what Mark, Reed, and Ken said about, you know, working in the Capitol here. You know, I'm running for the U.S. Senate because there's really three reasons. One, the two-party system is just fundamentally broken. And Idahoans know it, and Americans know it. Right. And if you look any objective measure, right, whether it's fiscal discipline or entitlement reform or even, you know, geostrategic competition with China, we're failing. Right. We're absolutely failing. We're not making these hard decisions. You know, and the second reason, and I hear this again and again from folks in Idaho, is, you know, Idahoans can't afford to live in Idaho. Right. The economy is just fundamentally broken, and it's been rigged over the last 20 years. I mean, we've created a political economy that's designed for, you know, the rich and corporations at the expense of workers, consumers, you know, and others. And it's not working. And you know, the legislation that I brought the Idaho legislature last year was three things. I brought a bill to raise the minimum wage. I brought a bill to ban non-compete agreements, and a bill to ban algorithmic price fixing. You know, rents in Idaho have increased 3 times faster than inflation since 2019. And it's price fixing. And it's just flat out freaking illegal, and we're not getting these things solved. So these are things I think we need to do at the national level, you know. And then finally, you know, running for the U.S. Senate, you know, in Idaho, the reason you can pull this off in Idaho, because Idaho, even though it looks like an R22 state, it's actually just, you know, fiercely independent. Before we closed the primaries in 2012, 70% of Idahoans were unaffiliated with a party. 70%. That was the highest in the nation in 2012. Boise State University does an annual public policy survey. 65% of Idahoans either declare themselves as independent or lean independent. And, you know, and I ran a district. I won a district with 60%. That's only 25% registered Democrat. And the number one thing I heard when I was knocking on Republican doors is, man, you're a better Republican than that other one on the ballot. And so the elements are there in Idaho to be able to pull this off. It looks like a deep red state, but if you just pull back a couple layers, you see that it's an independent state and they're ready for change. And they're just sick and tired of the division and the parties both going deeper into these corners. and leaving that huge distribution of voters in the middle with no representation.
So as a reflection, I think, of the growth of our movement, we've got California, we've got Idaho, and we've got Nashville, Tennessee. And this movement is growing, and leaders are stepping up. Khalil, you're a trusted voice in Tennessee, right? You're kind of an informal mayor. You've been working in media for decades. You understand what people are talking about, what they care about, and what they want. So what insight has that given you, and why has it brought you here for this today?
When I first moved to Nashville, Tennessee, I was told that Nashville was a blueberry in a bowl of red salsa. Not true. It's a grape. It's purple. We talked to all of Middle Tennessee, not just focusing in on what was happening in Nashville. And the way that I approach my job as a host of a show is to listen to all voices. I let people talk, and I lead with humanity and respect. That is what caused the effect that when I stepped down from my show in April, conservatives, liberals, progressives, even some folks who were MAGA reached out to me and said they always appreciated how I treated people and their humanity. What I've come to understand is that this wide gap is most of Middle Tennessee. That wide gap is most of Nashville. People have separated themselves into camps and factions, so to speak, because of the political party that they have supported, that their families may have supported. That doesn't really talk to the issues and the things that happen in their lives. Talking to people. When I first moved to Nashville, I was introduced to the former mayor and therefore introduced to several other people who set policy, who were very powerful. But how did I learn what Nashvillians wanted? I went to dive bars. I went to Walmart. I would just talk to them and understand. There were people in dive bars who did not know that I had the job that I had until they tuned in and heard my voice. And they said, you're the radio dude. I'm like, yeah. Well, you never talked to us about politics. I was like, there's no need. I was getting to know who you are, because our politics can fluctuate and shift according to what the issue is, and most importantly, what is happening to us in our individual lives. I used to be an educator. I've done a lot of different jobs in my life. I was an educator. I've worked in television. I was a bartender. The one thing I told all my students is the famous Muhammad Ali quote. I think many of you know it. The person who believes the same thing at 50 years old than they did at 20 wasted 30 years of their life. And it's true. You will learn a lot more by opening yourself up to experiences. And when understanding what's going on with Nashvillians, particularly right now, same issues. A lot of Nashvillians and Middle Tennessee folks can't afford to live in the place where their families have lived for years. People are worried about healthcare. People are worried about the quality of education, not just for their children, but themselves. People are looking to improve their station in life. But if it's hard to just live and suddenly I can't, as an adult, take courses, what does that mean? And to sum it up, what I've come to understand is that we're all human beings and none of us are perfect. We all obviously have room to grow, but we have to appreciate that humanity within each other to have the very difficult conversations when it comes to things like policy and like change.
So George Washington was the original independent American. And what an independent is has been kind of redefined almost every couple of years in national politics, from Ross Perot to Jesse Ventura to RFK Jr. And it still feels like it's an evolving definition nationally. But people are always going to ask ultimately about policy. We care a lot about putting veterans forward because we feel like independence is most urgent and necessary around national security and defense and foreign policy. That's when you need a true independent and not a partisan. But for each of you, it may be different. So for you, Ethan, what are you running on? What are your priorities when you present yourself as an independent? This is a discussion on public policy. What are you presenting as an independent for governor of California?
Well, I think that abundance is the most important thing for a society. When a society has an abundance mentality, everyone's on their best behavior. Everyone loves each other. When a society is operating a scarcity mentality, it's every man and every woman for themselves. And I think we unfortunately see a scarcity society in California today. And I think we see a scarcity society in the United States today. And part of it is the debt problems that we have and the economic problems that the first panel discussed in detail. So for me, as a person whose kind of business experience is steeped in financial markets, I want to bring that to the table at the very beginning of my tenure for the benefit of Californians. I want to reset California as a society that has abundance and not scarcity. And I think from that, many good things will come. For me, it'll be tax policy. I think there are a couple things for me that the United States has delivered for me in my life, and that I think that the United States uniquely presents, that I think are foundational, that we are losing or have lost. One is social mobility. So I grew up quite poor, and I was able to work my way with student loans and financial aid and make my way with no connections to a very high level in the world of finance. That's very hard to do for young people today. And I think having that dream, that American dream, diminished is something that's very problematic. The other one is private property. So I think private property rights are foundational for our society. And I think that Governor DeSantis in Florida has the right inclination when he starts to talk about property tax as antagonistic to private property rights. And so for me, I think that those are some hallmarks of a tax plan that I'm forming right now. That will be the beginning. But I think in the end, I want to create a society, Khalil, I agree with you 100%. I think we need to love each other. We need to respect each other. We need to have community. We're losing that. We've lost it. I think abundance will help bring that back. And I think smart tax policy will be a foundational aspect of when I begin my tenure.
Yeah, Todd?
Yeah, I think at a federal level, we've got to do term limits, and the national debt needs to be a bright red line for anybody. I mean, the one big beautiful bill should not have passed with a debt extension on it. And in Idaho, it's public lands, right? That is the most unifying issue in Idaho. Protect our public lands, and we're not going to allow anybody to sell off an acre. At the state level, again, I think it gets back to these economic issues. If you're a millennial or a Gen Z, the American dream is out of reach, right? And that didn't just happen. That was intentional policy over the last couple decades. And this is coming from somebody who's run, I've run billion-dollar global operations for Fortune 50s, right? There's no competition left in the U.S. economy. It's weak. Entrepreneurship is challenged, and we need to rebuild that vibrant economy again, and that's going to create the opportunities and fix those affordability issues.
I do want to say something. You mentioned Gen Z and millennials not having opportunity to afford the American dream, but what about Generation X? Some people are still taking time to get there. That's what I'm saying. We have to think about everyone, not just specific demographic groups that we want to bring in because they may be, an issue may be hot at the moment.
And baby boomers are living with no savings and facing scary retirement, not knowing how they're going to make it.
It's not over for Americans until you take your last breath. That's what I'm saying. If we are this country of resilient people, I've met and become friends with too many people. I'm 50, I'll be 52 in a couple months. I've met too many people who call me kid because they were 52, 30, 40 years ago that I hang out with. They talk about the opportunity for them to change as they got older. That's something that's important that I think all Americans need and all Americans want. But specifically in Tennessee, some of the issues that are there, and I'm not saying that I'm running. I've just been a host of a show for an NPR affiliate for a few years. Healthcare.
A lot of folks want you.
I'm thinking about it. They're talking. They're talking. They're talking about it. We'll see. But healthcare. Because of the big beautiful bill, 9 rural hospitals in Tennessee are poised to close. It is very difficult. I moved here from New Mexico, where if you weren't in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, or Las Cruces and you broke your leg, you would have to get flown to one of those cities to get taken care of. It is a similar situation in Tennessee. Doctors and healthcare professionals aren't going up there to set up shop because their opportunity is not there for them to make any money. That's a difficult situation. North Nashville is 37208. It's the highest incarcerated zip code in the country. In North Nashville, they are facing some of the same issues that they are out in rural parts of Tennessee. But because of the idea of Republicans, Democrats, because of this separation, us versus them, people aren't able to see where they are affected in that they're both being affected by the same issues. Therefore, it may be a different voice politically, a different view politically, not only to bring them together to see the similarities of their hardships and their struggles, but to create solutions. An independent voice can open up and not just rely on the experts from its own camp. It can open up to everyone to produce solutions. I don't think all the answers lie with Republicans, and all the answers damn sure don't lie with Democrats. The answers lie with the people. Let's give them the opportunity to choose.
They're hoping to do that with you on the ticket, I think, in some cases.
We'll see.
We're going to go to questions
We'll see.
in a second, but I want to ask you guys a really specific question. A lot of folks say independents are spoilers and not real candidates. They're secretly Democrats or Republicans. We are redefining and defining what it means to be independent, but put a point up. How do you each define independent right now in 2025 for folks who are still curious or unsure about what that means? How do you define independent?
Look, I said it at the very beginning. I think what independents have in common is authenticity. And I think we're not beholden to special interests. We've chosen that path. We believe what we believe. I'd like to believe we're good listeners and learn, like Khalil said. And I'd like to believe that we're in it for the right reasons, which is we're here to help our fellow citizens. We're here to create a better society. And I think that's what independents have in common. I don't think it's an ideological thing. I think some of us lean right, some of us lean left. On different issues, we may disagree vehemently, but we can do that. And we can do that respectfully with an understanding that we are here bringing our authentic selves for the benefit of our society. That's what independent means to me.
All right, listen, you got to be fiercely pragmatic and just get shit done, right? And it doesn't matter who you're working with, just get it done.
Yeah.
I would battle it out with the far right legislator in the session on one bill, and then she co-signed or co-sponsored my bill, and we worked on it in the afternoon. Doesn't matter, right? What are the issues? Focus, get them done.
Yeah. Yeah. I ditto on what both of these gentlemen have said. And also, again, being open to different sets of ideas, not so ensconced in a party philosophy, and most importantly, your own. A lot of times when I've seen, over the course of my lifetime, someone running for elected office, they say, you vote me in and I will vote my conscience on the issues. And one of the things I think that made me successful or just good and people appreciated how I hosted my show was the first lesson that I was taught when I got into broadcasting. And they said, the audience learn as the hosts learn. So what I took that as, meaning I'm in it with them. You listen to my podcast, you listen to my show, you know that I, as the host, am in it with you. So if what our representatives and people who run for elected office should be doing is recognizing and saying to their constituency, I am in it with you. So it's not just upon me to make the decision on an important bill. I want to get all the information out to everyone that I would represent, and we make that decision together. That is an independent voice. When it comes to working with people, of course, it makes sense. My grandmother used to always say, do you want to be right or do you want to solve the problem? That is the essence. We have problems that we're facing. Let's listen to each other. Let's take time. And the sign off for my show, let's be good to each other in the process of doing it.
And on that, I think independents have a unique ability to relate, because right now, I think, like, for example, in my state in California, if you're a Republican, honestly, a Democrat won't talk to you. The ears closed.
Yeah.
They're just closed.
Yeah.
Right? And vice versa, I'm sure. And
In Nashville, it's like that. It's Republicans versus Democrats.
Has become, right? And I think that that's not
Not the case
healthy
now.
for society. It's not how we grow as a society. It's
No.
not how we solve problems. And so I don't have every answer. None of these guys have every answer. But it's about talking. And that's the beauty of a democracy, is being able to bring different perspectives and different histories to a debate and learn from each other and come up with the right solution rather than my solution or his solution.
Yeah.
And I
Do
think
that.
independents can do that.
Let's do that and take some questions. Before we do this, one thing I want to say. There's a lot of talk about third parties, fourth party, fifth party, other parties. What I've seen consistently in our community is that most of the independents I talk to do not think the solution to the two parties is another party. They want none of the above. They want to maintain that independence, especially within the veterans community. They didn't have a party affiliation when they were deployed overseas, and they don't want to pick one now. Their allegiance is to a country, or to our country, to our community, not necessarily to a party. So I think there's a missing part of this conversation where a lot of folks that I talk to say, none of the above is my answer, right? It's got a middle finger to all of it. And what they're looking for is leaders that can stand for integrity and independence and authenticity and all the things you're talking about. But I want to take some quick questions if we have time.
Yeah.
Please, in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Well, to that point, one of the questions I have for all of you is, as you anticipate being an independent candidate, what do you see as the greatest obstacles to your being able to actually win? Because we've run a lot of independent candidates in the past, wonderful candidates with great resumes, and only about 3 or 4% of them win. So we at the Forward Party are looking to build that infrastructure that can support candidates like you to help you win. But what are you already encountering that you need? What are the deficits?
For me, I would say it's one thing, which is skepticism, right? We believe, our society's been taught to believe you're red or blue, you're Republican or Democrat, and the funding comes for that. I think with skepticism, funding becomes harder. And so as an independent, you meet that skepticism and then you have to work past it. And I think that's been something that I've been doing.
I mean, we've got to build all the party infrastructure. Obviously, we got to build the database. We got to do all that stuff. Idaho's only 2 million people, so that's a solvable problem. When winter comes, it gets a little harder to get around the state. That's a solvable problem too. I will say though, the feedback to my announcement, I announced at the beginning of the month, it's just been fantastic. In fact, we're still digging out from all the emails and people signing up to volunteer and everything else. I've over 3 days, I've talked to every single person that volunteered, and it'll reaffirm your faith in the country. I mean, people are doing this for the right reason, and it's not just disaffected Dems or disaffected Rs, but it's really a great cross section of the state, and people are ready for something.
I haven't decided if I'm running or not. But the one thing I think people need, that authenticity that you both spoke about. But when's the last time you heard an elected official say that they were wrong and that they made a mistake? You let your constituents know that I'm a human being. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to do my absolute damn best to represent you in the way that you voted me into office to do. But I'm a human being. I could make a mistake on a policy issue or things. I think with where we're at now, the frustration that people have in their lives. I don't care. There's a lot of people in this room of different economic backgrounds. I don't care if you're in the 1% or if you're struggling every day and eating ramen noodles. Every American is unsettled in some way deep inside that it's hard for us to put a finger on and pinpoint. But you will be more reassured should you have someone say, I'm going to be the best I can, but I'm a human being and I'm not perfect. I may make mistakes. Help me out. I will stay in constant communication with you. It is a relationship between an elected person in elected office and their constituency. If you're going to have a good relationship at home with your spouse and partner, what do you need? Communication. Authentic, true, honest communication. Evolution, new ideas. I think that is something that can break through.
I'd like to just address what I hear a lot from our candidates that point out money, like scalable strategic resources. And if we're going to fight against a duopoly, what we need right now is a couple of billionaires to stand up and get scalable resources. We don't have an Elon Musk. We don't have, a George Soros. We don't have a Koch brothers. And there are a lot of folks that are kind of circling this movement to see if it develops, if there will be a real strategic plan, if strategic leaders will break through, if people can win. But I think it's time for some folks to understand that we're greatly outdone. And until we solve for that problem and move the decimal point a couple of places, we can't encourage a guy like him to run. We can't help guys like this to win. I got the 1 minute sign, so I'm going to have to ask you to hold your questions because part of my job is to be point guard and timekeeper and keep us on time. I want to thank the Independent Center for stepping up and providing community, which is really lacking. I will tell you, someone who's been working this space now for 5 years, we need to come together. We are all in this together, and that's a really important function.
Yeah.
Check out Independent Americans tomorrow, where you can watch the video and listen to this, and the conversations we've had with independent candidates from across the country, from across all different offices, including, I see Governor Christine Todd Whitman, I think in the back, was a guest on our show, and some other folks that have really helped move this ball forward. So thank you for leadership. Please, round of applause for our panel. Back over to you guys. Thank you, everybody. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this exclusive look inside the independent movement and my panel at the Independence Center. Right behind me is the Washington Monument, which stands strong over this city no matter what has happened over the last couple of decades, the last couple of years, and the last couple of months. But know this, our independent movement is here in Washington and it is growing, and it's because of your support. So please continue to spread the word. Go to independentamericans.us and know that you are not alone in this movement. We're all in this together, now more than ever. And stay vigilant. And know that vigilance is the price of freedom. And it's required now more than ever. But know you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all in this together. As I look at the Potomac behind me, as you see the Lincoln Memorial and so many other iconic spots in this city, know that independents are here and we are fighting to defend and protect not just the symbols, but the values that this city and this country stand for. I'm your host, Paul Reichoff. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Until next time, down with Hamas, Slava Ukraini, and stay vigilant, America. Stay vigilant, especially here in Washington and all across this country.
Powered by Righteous Media.